Hello, my name is Marco, and as I was walking and meditating on the teachings of Musashi Miyamoto and the Book of Five Rings, and I was trying to figure out how to apply them to my life, and I found something very interesting. Maybe it's not so interesting, but Musashi Miyamoto was a Ronin, and Ronins were wandering wannabe samurai. They had no house, they had no backing, no support. They were illegitimate, pretty much illegitimate. As an independent writer, you will find the same thing. You will want to live in tradition and wealth and get the book deals, but unfortunately, unless you know the right people, that's not going to happen. Shine the right shoes, know the right people, have the right family connections. For most of us, that's out of reach. At the same time, tradition is dying. Musashi Miyamoto was at that same place. A swordsman could be a great swordsman, but a warrior had to know all of the weapons. A swordsman just had to know the sword, and the sword was just one tool in a toolbox. And so Musashi was proficient in archery, firearms, as primitive as they were back in the day. But he was in a time of great change, and he never got a full house, big publisher contract, big time book deal. Never got that. But he got something a little bit more, and he became a legend. And I believe that was through his strategy and his approach to all things. And I think I can apply that to writing as well. And so this is my thoughts on world building and how to apply it. I think it will evolve more over time. Even now, I'm thinking about it. It has grown, and the concept can mature a little more. So I'll probably eventually make a better video after this, after the one I've already made, because I'm continuing the journey, the meditation, and yeah.
Hello, my name is Marco, and I am here to talk about world building. This was requested by Genshin player, who was tweeted me at Dragonaudiobooks, and he says, I've started to write a book myself. I was wondering if you could give me some tips when it comes to world building and story making in general. And that's a huge topic, and we can write a whole book on that in itself, and it might be fun. But anyways, world building, and I'm going to break this down into 5 parts. And this is inspired by a famous samurai. You might have heard of him. His name is Musashi Miyamoto. So, might be close. But he wrote a book, and it was called The Five Rings, the Book of Five Rings. And he breaks down his philosophy into 5 elements, which are represented by ground, water, void, fire, and wind. And he's a really interesting guy. He broke a lot of traditions. He was a wandering samurai. He came from a very poor background, and he was undefeated. He went around dueling and defeating every master he could. And so there's different elements and of this, and I thought it would be pretty cool to kind of sort my process into a similar way. And world building is, to quote Musashi Miyamoto, is to know the smallest things and the biggest things, the shallowest things and the deepest things, as if it were a straight road mapped out on the ground. And so that's and the first book is called the Ground Book, or the Ground Scroller. But knowing the small things, knowing the fine details, that's very powerful. And I remember my grandfather, he was telling me a story, and the story, he talked about the sandy soil and the seashells, and I remember just when I felt the texture of the soil, I immediately felt like I was there, and it was just the smallest thing. And some people think, that's, you don't always need to do that. Sometimes you overdo that. If you add too much detail and it's too cumbersome and it's not easy to follow. And there's different types of style, and I acknowledge that. But there's when I create a world, my goal is to make it like a character. Most people, when they start out with the characters first. And that's okay. I've done it both ways. I've started with the characters, the Dragon Scourge, the fun book, and fun characters, and by the time I reached the second book, I really wished I had more grasp of the world, that I made a map first. It was really hard to make a map after writing the first book. I did it, and but I just wish I had started out with more of a foundation first. But I was young. I started that book series when I was in high school, and so there's a lot of learning as I go. And some stories, you don't need this. You don't need to worry about world building. Alice in Wonderland, for example. Alice in Wonderland is a great plot-driven book, and is a great character-driven book. And those are different elements that, so I want to focus on world building right now. But in certain books, you don't need that. You don't need everything what I'm about to give. If it is a certain type of book, a certain type of story. But for epic fantasy, a lot of moving parts, it helps out a lot. And so this is, I believe, part of mastering the ground, the earth, laying down the foundation first. In the Book of Five Rings, one of the elements is called the void. Or I would prefer it to be called maybe like the spatial awareness or something. But the one thing you want to know is that this is how Musashi Miyamoto says it. By void, I mean which has no beginning and no end. Attaining this principle means not attaining the principle. And that's a lot of mystic mumbo-jumbo. But we want to find a balance of everything. Because we can get too earthbound and there's no flow. When I create a world, when it comes to world building, I want to create a flow where it helps the river. It helps the water become more powerful, more efficient, and not bogged down and muddy and swampy. I want the river, the water, to flow. And that means throwing a lot of details, a lot of cool things, but we don't want to make it a textbook, because every world is infinite. The earth is infinite. Each character is infinite. Brandon Sanderson, he will refer this as world builder's disease. And it's basically over-analyzing things where you're earthbound, you're not able to flow. And it hinders progress. I had a friend who was, we hung out a lot and we shared manuscripts and he was a great writer, but he never finished his book. Why? He was really hard on himself. He overanalyzed, and he stopped. But he got busy, had family, and he had priorities, and that's okay. That's totally fine. But no, sometimes the most important thing is to write, and I'm giving you a cooking book, if you will. This is, this is my style, my flavor of writing that I've come to enjoy through my experiences. And like I said, I started out with, starting with the characters first. And character building is really important. The plot is really important. But when you make the world its own character, that's powerful. That's really powerful. And there's different key aspects, and I want to cover some things that maybe haven't been talked about, aren't so popular, and I want to give some concrete ground things. But make sure we don't get lost in the weeds, that there's the balance. We've got to keep the void, the spatial awareness, to make it, make it palatable. Because that writing, it basically becomes like a recipe. We're cooking, and not everyone's going to like what you're cooking or what I'm cooking, and that's okay. I have friends that don't like cheese, they don't like chocolate, they don't like certain things. It's just a matter of preference. I love reading historical accounts. I don't like reading fiction in first person. It's just a preference. It's just preference. I really don't like zombie books. But Garth Nix If you've ever read Sabriel, does such a great job with the characters, the world, and the plot that there's lots of zombies, but I was like, zombies bore me. But it's one of my favorite series. So there's that void, if you will, and that preference, and there's certain things we can, when we strike the right balance. And again, when I make a world, the world becomes alive. That's my goal. I want the world to be someplace you want to visit, or could say you've been there. Maybe it's the most horrible place on the planet, or fictional anyways, but you could say you've been there. And that's when I write, that's my goal. And as a cautionary tale, we all like to look at Tolkien. Tolkien is a master at world building. He created all the different languages, and he made a masterpiece. But what if he was only able to write that certain series? What if he wasn't able to continue writing because he overanalyzed it? Maybe yes, maybe no. He did try to write some more after, but I think he overanalyzed it. You can see that Tolkien really likes to get into details, and that's fine. That's what makes it a masterpiece. But I like his books just as much as I like Garth Nix's books, just as much as I like Shad Brooks, as just as much as I like Brandon Sanderson's books. And yeah, but Tolkien was only able to, he did one thing really well, and that's fine. I never want to say, quantity is better than quality, but there's a mixture where if we're overthinking things and nothing's getting done, we have to find a way to flow. And so I'm going to throw a lot of details at you, and they're cool. Some of them, maybe, but we'll see. I'm going to throw right now a lot of concrete things that really affect your character. And the reason why I like studying these things is they grow. When the world has a character, it imprints onto my character. It makes my characters, the world molds them. And they have so much more richness, so much more flavor, because I started with the world. If you do any drawing or anything like that, if you start with the background first and establish the lighting first before you start with your subject, you can do a whole lot more. You can do a whole lot more with it. And so that's what I'm doing right now. So first off, make a map. I wish I had started making maps sooner than I did. So before I started writing Founder's Keep, this is the latest book, and I made a map. Why? Because previous books I wish I had. When I made, and with this book, I felt like I grew a lot more. I was able to accomplish a lot more. I felt more satisfied. I had more characters. I was more rich. I had more zest to it. And And that's the way I do things now. So, so when you make a map, establish a government, all the different governments. Where is the capital? And when I talk about the government, I'm also talking about politics. Learn as much as you can about politics, as reasonable as possible. And, you know, you don't want to add too much, but you want to know just enough to get the idea. Because there's different types of government, and it's really good to know the local types of government there are. You know, Robin Hood, for example. You have Prince John, but Robin Hood is mostly he runs into the Sheriff of Nottingham, because the Sheriff of Nottingham is the local law enforcement there. You want to know about mayors, governors, and different things where, you know, if you affect something, how far does the ripple go? If you upset this person, will it go beyond the local level? And when you, yeah, it helps. So establish a government, cities, capitals, and then you can get into religion. And politics and religion are really taboo, and like Musashi Miyamoto, I am not orthodox. I love the learning about people. I like learning about religion, and religion affects everything. Everything. There's wars. There's holidays. There's architecture, and then also religion will affect your clothing, your apparel design. That affects that directly affects your characters in that region, and their thoughts and views and their world life experiences. So religion's really important. And the religion can affect a lot of things, just like the government can, and it will affect the government, and it will affect the flags and the banners and the colors. And also, depending on what kind of religion, the landscape, the land, the natural things, rivers, mountains, can also affect the world. It can the nature can imprint itself into the religion. The Greeks, the Greek gods, they had Mount Olympus, and that was the home of the gods. You have rivers, sacred rivers. You have different things, you know, and sometimes the absence of a religion will affect the outlook as well. Like politics. Sometimes they'll have ancestor worship. Sometimes there'll be, you know, a statue, if you will. In the United States, there's the Mount Rushmore with the different presidents carved. Their faces are carved into the mountain. That's gonna, you know, those are great landmarks. I'll tell you another story. Another story is I landed in Ireland. the Ireland airport. I never got to go outside. I saw it from the window, and I landed, and I never got to go outside. I didn't feel like I was actually there, but I was there, technically. You know, and some of the details, you know, if, you know, I spent a couple hours in the airport, and it's haunted me ever since that I never got to go outside. But if I had just 1 hour, I could have claimed that, oh yeah, I was in Ireland. If I had gone outside, if I had seen some of the architecture, seen some of the buildings, seen some of the castles, and maybe had some, you know, had some local food. Food's really important. Knowing the local produce, that helps a lot. That brings a lot of character, and it, you know, how does your character feel about some of the local foods? What are their favorites? Do they have is there something they look forward to every day? Do they have a weekend? Is there a holiday coming up? Is there Christmas, New Year's, winter solstice, All Hallows Eve, that sort of thing? That deepens that world experience. So when I landed in Ireland, you know, I was at a loss. I didn't feel like I was actually there, and I really wasn't. I can't claim I was in Ireland. And so if you go, you know, and it's the same way. If I wanted to go to Italy, here are some things I would want to see. I would want to see Venice. I would want to take a ride on one of those little boats and go through the water canals. I would want to see the Colosseum, and I would want to see you know, all the great architecture, and I would want to have some pasta, some local food. And even if I was only there for 1 hour, I could say, yeah, I was in Italy. But so that's the character. That's the uniqueness, the details that I think are important in world building, and that's going to shape the character. For an example, Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. Hogwarts is a great example of the power of world building. Hogwarts is its own destination. And through Harry Potter, we vicariously got to experience what it's like to be in Hogwarts. If J.K. Rowling got rid of all of the characters and started anew, people would still be interested because he did such a good job with the world building. George R.R. Martin, who wrote the Game of Thrones and you know, the Hedge Knight series, is famous. He's famous for eliminating characters, and he has lots of good characters, and there's power in making good characters. But if you eliminate someone's favorite character in chapter 1, that's, will people keep reading? You've better have been able to establish a good plot and a good world. Something that's compelling, just like Star Wars. Star Wars is a great example of great world building. The customs of has politics and you know, the Jedi, the Force. The Force is its own religion, and that's very compelling. And you could have different characters in a different world. Terry Pratchett has great books, great plot, great characters, and he has a really wacky world. And it's, you know, So the world can be as strange and as different as you like it to be, but you need you need certain elements to be like, to feel like you've been there. And like I said, food, weather, animals. Animals are cool. I read a book. I forgot the title of the book. It's been such a long time. But it was about a ship, and they're going to the Galapagos Islands, and they were chasing a French ship, and they're, it was the English and the French way back in the, when they're fighting each other, and on the Renaissance time period, but the book was so long and boring. The bad plot, all right characters, but the animals, and just going through the Galapagos Islands. I remember it was just so long, but I couldn't put it down because I had a sense of awe. And I know there's only so much you can put in a book, but I remember having that sense of awe and being compelled, and like I said, the details, those made it real and made me want to see it or go to the Galapagos Islands. I felt like I was there, and I was able to suffer through the book. The movie they made out of it was totally opposite. It had action, it had great character building, and but not so much world building. And it was good. It was a great action flick. It was called Master and Commander, and yes, there's different mediums, and you have to, there's power and character. But the movie didn't focus on the Galapagos Islands so much as the book did. All the fighting in the book was like a couple of pages at the very end. And so yeah, that's so I'll talk about plot and character building maybe some other time. But world building, if you make your world a character, that's very powerful, very compelling. And having food, politics, religion, those are very, really, really good things. And learning about the different type of military, this finer structures of the military helps. I mean, you can make up your own columns as well. But when you have a rank and structure, that provides a lot of substance. And you can even take this into like a modern world, or not modern world, but like Earth. Like you want to have, if you wanted to base a story in like New York or someplace, if you study a little bit and not being from there, we're going to get things wrong. And one of my favorite quotes from Mark Twain is, never let facts ruin a good story. And I think that's part of the void, if you will, when it comes to story building. Never let facts ruin a good story. And so I want to say that don't let that take away with from you, from your dream. Sometimes things are stretched out. It's all about the story. It's all about entertainment, and that's why I'm doing this, is for entertainment. Let's see, what else we got? We got animals, landscape, mountains, swamps. Those are all good, all great details. But the fact is, we'll never be able to fit everything in there. Each character could be a book. 100,000 words or 400 pages goes by quick. And if you want to look at some political books, you got a library full of them, and you'd never be able to squish them all into one book. If you want to, have animal books, there's a whole library full of just one animal. If you want to, research all about sharks, you're gonna come with a stack of shark books, or birds, or just one type of bird even. But the real art is to lay the groundwork so it is a benefit for the water, for the river to flow. And fire. Fire is a great, so according to Musashi Miyamoto, the essence of this book is that you must train day and night in order to make quick decisions and strategy. It is necessary to treat training as part of a normal life with your spirit unchanging. Now, the fire, that's your passion. You have got to keep your passion alive. And lawn projects, it's hard. And we've only have so many books that we can write. And tomorrow is not guaranteed. And so, if you're struggling, like, I have all these ideas, how do I start? Write a story that you want to be remembered by. Because that might be the last story you ever type in, to be honest. Look at all the different authors. Brian Jakes, Terry Pratchett, J.R. Tolkien. Those guys aren't with us anymore. How many stories did they write? Tolkien, he wrote one series, and he did it well. Will we get to write more than one? You don't know. You have absolutely no idea. So when it comes to fire, the element of fire, keep that alive. Keep your passion alive. Do it as much as possible. Don't, that's, and recognize, and it takes work to maintain that. And let's see, the last element is wind. And maybe wind could be more translated into spirit, to your soul. Musashi Miyamoto broke a lot of traditions. And he was a Ronin, he wandered. And as a starting writer, we are Ronin, It's hard to get noticed. It's really hard to get noticed. And people will tell you things. Oh, you just gotta keep submitting. I'm telling you now, the way of writing has changed dramatically. The way of writing has changed dramatically. And so you're doing good. You want to have an online presence. But don't be discouraged by rejection, because rejection is going to come. And if I wish I could say I figured it all out. I haven't figured it all out. Writing the book will be easy. Getting it noticed, getting someone to read, a 400-page manuscript, that's not an easy thing. Not an easy thing. So we want to be flexible, like the wind. We want to know the void. Have that rhythm, and season your writing. All these things, all these details are good seasoning. There are some writers famous writers, that have hardly any detail, and that allows them, and it's mostly dialogue. I don't like reading those types of books. I don't. I like knowing the details. I like seeing body language and different reactions and different thoughts and different customs and different tasting the flavor of the food. I like that. I like the smell and the feel of the earth. And yeah, that's my style. And other people will tell you different, and that's fine. And we all have a little bit of something different, something unique. And yeah, so it's good to have a foundation, good ground. And I recognize sometimes you're inspired, you gotta write. And that's good too. But as soon as you can, make a map. If you're writing a epic fantasy with a lot of different moving parts, you have different countries, different characters coming and meeting each other from all different areas. That's important, but don't destroy the flow. Write when you can, and when it's time to meditate, that's the great time. When you're meditating on what you're going to write, that's a great time to start making your map and making your, the world, the customs, the beliefs, the things that make your character. And they'll give your characters more depth. When your world becomes its own character, it brings a 2D character and makes them a 3D character. It gives them another dimension. And that's just like drawing. If you can draw the character, but then but if you don't account for the light, they're just flat. And it can be a great 2D drawing. But when you add that extra dimension in there, it brings more. It brings more substance. And again, this is when you go for a novel. The element of fire is important. to keep going on with every bit of free time you have. And sometimes you don't get things. When I'm struggling to write, I move more into, okay, map making. I move more into drawing those characters. I put that energy into studying, and then but you're always making progress. You're always in one way, because sometimes we have energy for some things and other times we don't. If you want to research about horse riding, about animals, about if it's a sci-fi, about space travel, that's great, especially when you're tired and it's hard to flow. But just continue building that fire. And that's what I got for today. And yeah.